The HOA president touched my 13-year-old daughter in the middle of the courtroom. The bailiff was frozen in place. The judge was right in the middle of banging his gavel, when, well, what happened next will make your blood boil. So, stay to the end, because Karen's reaction when the real lawyers showed up, chef's kiss. Like and subscribe to Neighbor Wars HQ for more HOA nightmares. My name is Marcus Chen, and 3 years ago, I did the dumbest thing in my life. I bought a house within the Sunset Meadows HOA community. You know what you're thinking? The typical starting story to all HOA horror tales is the guy who bought the house and all went to hell from there. And honestly, you are right. But the thing is, I really did my due diligence before buying the house. I read the bylaws entirely, scoured the internet for criticisms, and talked to at least 3 neighbors before breaking the news to my bank to get the loan approved. Each one said the same thing. Oh yeah, the HOA in the area is totally chill. So all they care about is making sure the lawns are cut. Nothing more. What they didn't tell me was that the HOA just elected a president named Patricia Vanderbilt 6 months prior to my purchase. And let me tell you, passion wasn't going to cover the activities that Pat was going to get up to. In my first month as an HOA member, I got notices for the following offenses. My mailbox was the wrong color. It was supposed to be either regulation silver or approved brushed nickel. But mine was clearly the one that was supposed to be approved, and the other one was simply regulation silver. So what? Okay, fine, my welcome mat was 1 inch too big according to the aesthetic guidelines, okay? But the worst one was my 10-year-old's pink bike riding in our very own driveway, but exposed to the street and painted the wrong color palette. You heard that right. My daughter's bicycle was the problem. It was pink with ribbon streamers on the handlebars and a brown bell that went ding, ding, ding. It was my Sophie's anniversary gift to herself. It took her 8 months to save up half the price, and it was the best bicycle on the block to boot. But according to Pat Vanderbilt, the HOA was right to ban the bicycle from my property because it didn't meet the HOA standards. So, I did what every logical person would have done in this situation. No? I attended the HOA meeting. The meeting is held inside Patricia's house, which boasted 6,000 square feet, with the design aesthetic of someone watching too much HGTV and not enough real TV. Everything in this McMansion screamed beige. There were about 15 people in attendance. Patricia sat at the front of the table like she was running some Fortune 500 company meeting, not addressing whether some guy in 2247 Maple needed to trim his hedge. Mr. Chen, thank goodness you could join us. I assume it's regarding your violations? Actually, yes. I wanted to bring up the situation with the bike. The bylaws specifically state this. Mr. Chen, Sec. 7, Par 14, Sub C. No recreational equipment shall be visible from the street unless stored within approved housing units. Your daughter's bike breaks this. It's in our driveway. Our PRIV8 driveway, and it's just a child's bike. The driveway is visible to passers-by on the street, and therefore it's visible to everyone on that street. Mr. Chen, this constitutes it being visible to everyone on that street. Then she named some outrageous fine per day until she could see it inside approved housing. $50 per day. For the bicycle? How absurd. Mr. Chen, if you don't like following the rules, perhaps we should have sold to someone else. This would be considered premium property with certain standards. This is when I noticed that Sophie trailed on in with me. She stood in the doorway with her pink bike helmet in hand, tears gathering in the corner of her eyes. Why does she dislike my bike, Daddy? The room fell silent. Even Patricia looked caught off guard. Oh, this discomfort lasted but a moment. That's not necessary to explain to this young lady. Mister, this has to do with maintaining property standards for all of us. But it's just a bike. I keep it tidy. I don't leave it right on the lawn. Rules, honey. I grabbed Sophie's hand to leave. My daughter asked me something that broke my heart on the car ride back. Daddy, are we bad neighbors? I wish I could report this with integrity. That I'd simply painted the bike, relocated it to the garage, and continued about my business. It's not so. The next day, Patricia sent me a proper letter, informing me of the $350 in fines I'd accumulated because of my 7 days of non-compliance. against an infraction she'd documented only 4 days before. She had backdated the ticket. What any rational person would do in this situation? I turned to the greatest authority of the modern age, Google. Research HOA regulations. Learn about the procedures HOAs are required to follow when ticketing homeowners for violations. In my particular state, HOAs must follow the letter of the law when it comes to fines and infractions. Specifically, the HOA regulations require written notice with photographs, a 30-day opportunity to correct first offenses in official hearing. If the homeowner disagrees with the HOA's assessment of the violation, Patricia had not done any of the foregoing, so I wrote her a certified letter disputing each infraction, referencing the state regulations she'd violated, and requesting an official hearing. Threw in a few cites from the Supreme Court to impress her with the authority of the matter. Received her reply 3 days after I'd posted the certified letter. Your hearing is set for the 15th of May at 7 p.m. You better be prepared to pay your fines. What followed was a complete farce. The hearing took place in Patricia's living room. Yet again, this hearing wasn't even worth transcribing. Note: there was no recording of the hearing. There were no minutes taken, just Patricia, her 2 vice president sisters and brother-in-law, and me. This sham of a hearing lasted all of 4 minutes in total. Patricia upheld each infraction upon which I'd received the ticket, inflicted a $200 fee for wasting the board's time. This is outrageous, I asserted indignantly. You're not supposed to just make up fines. Am the HOA president, Mr. Chen, she pontificated sanctimoniously. In point of fact, I possess a material measure of discretionary power. And you think discretionary power means you get to make up fines at random? Shouted incredulously. Actually, Mr. Chen, discretionary power is known in Section 12 of the article. That's not what discretionary power means. This hearing is over. You have 30 days to pay $550, or I'll put a lien against your property too. Boot. I could almost hear the whisper of the gavel falling in the background. You have a blessed day. And that night, I made another decision. I was not going to cough up a single penny. No, I was going to fight. I retained a lawyer. She was named Jennifer Martinez, and she was a specialist in HOA lawsuits. She was mid-30ish, brilliant, and she loathes HOA thugs. Marcus, let me tell you the truth. Most lawsuits against HOAs end up in settlements because homeowners can't afford to take them on. But your situation? Patricia has broken about 15 different state law codes. And if you're ready to take on the full might of this thing, we can take them down. I'm in. What's the plan? First, we'll file a complaint with the State Oversight Authority for HOAs. Next, we'll sue him for harassment and unlawful fines. In small claims court, finally, we'll demand a complete audit of HOA finances, because I'll lay a $10 bet that Patricia is taking liberties with their money. And that is precisely what we did. The next 6 months were a full-scale war. Patricia came at me for every little thing. My grass was 2.6 inches too long. The code is 2.5. Fine. $100. My address sign was the wrong font. Fine. $75. My garbage cans were still out in front of the house for 14 minutes past garbage pickup. Fine. $50. My front porch was unsightly obstruction because the package was left on it for 3 hours. Jennifer, this means we're escalating. Patricia has just crossed the line from which there is no return. The emergency hearing is set for 3 days hence. The judge reviewed our motion and the evidence. Testimony from the school that not only had Patricia been at the school harassing us, but she'd asked questions of our family there. The judge ordered the restraining order. Patricia is not to come within 100 feet of me, Sophie, or our property. Patricia is not permitted to contact the school Sophie went to, or any activity Sophie participated in. You'd think the matter is now closed. But no, the day of the court date has come. December 18th. I'd taken the day off from work. Jennifer had the whole thing ready. Binders of evidence, financial data, statements from the other homeowner, pictures of the selective enforcement. Then Sophie asked if she could come. Sophie, Dad, I want to see you win. Want the mean lady to get in trouble. I wasn't sure. This is going to be rough. But Jennifer thought the better of it. Now, Marcus, bringing Sophie might not be so bad. The judge will see just how serious Patricia is. It humanizes the case. Sophie showed up. She wore the purple dress she liked and brought the book she'd read while waiting for the end of the trial. We were at the courthouse at the 8:45 mark. We were scheduled for 9:30. The courtroom itself is of that older style. Wood paneling, high ceiling, American flag painted in the corner. Bailiff stands by the justice bench looking bored. Patricia showed up at the 9:15 mark with her sister and brother-in-law. She wore the cream-colored suit and had the leather-bound portfolio that made her seem like she was going to the nth degree of business. When she saw Sophie, her face turned white. Patricia to her sister loudly enough that we can hear. Quick. Can you believe that he brought the child? Jennifer leaped up. Jennifer, Your Honor, I'd like the record to show that the plaintiff is making accusations against the child here present. The judge, an older woman named Judge Rodriguez, looked up from her papers with a look that clearly stated she'd had enough nonsense that day. Judge Rodriguez. Miss Patricia. Your Honor. I was just saying, Judge Rodriguez, I don't want statements from spectators. I want silence until you are called to testify. Sit down. Patricia sat down, but she was seething. The trial began, and Jennifer laid out our case systematically. The unjustified fines, the absence of due process, the embezzlement, the selective punishment. She called witness after witness, neighbor after neighbor who had been intimidated by the HOA, an accountant who had analyzed the HOA's books, and even Sophie's teacher to corroborate Patricia's testimony of her visit to Sophie's school. It was going awesomely. Patricia represented herself and did not have an attorney. Her defense was, I am the HOA president, and I do as I please. Judge Rodriguez did not buy this performance one bit. Ms. Vanderbilt, do you understand HOA powers? Are gauged by state law? Correct? Patricia, Your Honor, if I may respond with all due respect, I have been running this HOA for 3 years, and Judge Rodriguez, those are not my questions. Can you understand I will not permit you to fine people arbitrarily? Patricia, the bylaws state how I am to conduct myself. Jennifer, Your Honor, if I might respond, the bylaws Patricia refers to have not been ratified as stated by state law, and we have the filing to prove. Patricia jumping to her feet and yelling, this is absurd. We're all going to be misses. Because this divorcee doesn't have the intelligence to follow simple directions and lets this ungrateful daughter. Judge Rodriguez slammed down the gavel as Patricia spoke. Ms. Vanderbilt, I will not permit slurs against any child in this courtroom. You will sit down at once. Patricia's face was flushed, and she had to hold on to the edge of the seat to keep from trembling with anger. And then she did something inconceivable and repulsive. She marched right over to us. Patricia pointing accusing finger at Sophie. You did this. All because you refused to put away your ugly bicycle? I would have done nothing but fix this HOA long ago. You have ruined. Judge Rodriguez interrupted and called for the bailiff to remove her. But Patricia was wasting no time. She reached our row of seats, and before anyone could react, she grabbed Sophie's arm and yanked her up. Sophie screaming, Ow, let go. I jumped up right away, knocking my chair back. Marcus, get your hands off my daughter. And this is where things seemed to go into slow motion. The bailiff, a stout man in his 50s with a stern face, named Officer Martinez, was headed for us, but he froze, literally, right in mid-step. And why? Because he never in his 18 years as a bailiff had ever witnessed someone physically attack a child in a courtroom. Judge Rodriguez was on his feet, gavel suspended in midair, jaw agape in shock. And Patricia still had Sophie's grip in her hand. Her face twisted with anger, and she was actually dragging Sophie into the aisle off too. Who knows where? Jennifer, someone stop her. That seemed to break the bailiff's freeze. He charged forward and grabbed hold of one of Patricia's wrists. Mom, release the child now. It seems that Patricia had come to her senses. She eased up her grip. Sophie broke away and ran back into my waiting arms, sniffling. Bailiff, detain Ms. Vanderbilt. Now, the courtroom spun apart. Ms. Vanderbilt was screaming about persecution. The bailiff was reading her rights as he cuffed her into handcuffs. Ms. Vanderbilt's sister was sobbing, and Ms. Vanderbilt's brother-in-law looked as though he had 2 left feet and would rather be anywhere than sitting there. Sophie was shaking in my embrace. Mr. Chen, I am profoundly sorry about this experience you and Sophie had. You both... All right, Sophie. Sophie nodded into my chest even as she continued to sob. I am ordering a recess. Ms. Martinez, would you see the prosecutor's office? Ms. Vanderbilt is going to face charges for assault, battery, assault on a minor, and contempt, court. And at the next session, 1 hour from now, I shall render my verdict on the HOA case. We are going to a private room. Sophie, come on, kiddo. You're going to be just fine. Sophie. Dad, why did she do that? Marcus. Because some people can't. Handle being wrong, sweetheart, but you did nothing wrong. Nothing. You understand me? She nodded. Jennifer returned 15 minutes later. Jennifer. The prosecutor is filing charges. Tricia's been held pending arraignment. Her bond hearing is tomorrow. Marcus. And our case? Jennifer smiling. Marcus, after what just happened, we've already won. But Judge Rodriguez wants to make sure that her decision is airtight, so Patricia can't appeal. When we returned, Judge Rodriguez didn't beat around the bush. Judge Rodriguez, I hereby rule that, owing to the criminal acts of Ms. Patricia Vanderbilt and the Sunset Meadows HOA, and because of the egregious constitutional rights violations, the plaintiff, Mr. Marcus Chen, is entitled to full and complete relief from the fines imposed by Ms. Vanderbilt and the Sunset Meadows HOA. In fact, those fines are null and void as of the date of my decision. Judge Rodriguez, I hereby order that Ms. Patricia Vanderbilt and the Sunset Meadows HOA must pay $8,500 as compensation and indemnity directly to Mr. Chen. Judge Rodriguez, furthermore, a thorough forensic audit of the applicable finances of the HOA and of Ms. Patricia Vanderbilt and of Ms. Amelia Barnes must also be carried out. Of course, that will be done by a court-appointed auditor. Judge Rodriguez also, having observed Ms. Patricia Vanderbilt's egregious behavior, among other things due to the criminal acts committed by Ms. Patricia Vanderbilt, and because of the manifest lack of good judgment and respect for the rule of law, a permanent injunction is hereby issued, preventing Ms. Patricia Vanderbilt from assuming either Patricia wasn't there to hear it. She was in a holding cell downtown. The next few months were a blur. Patricia was charged with assault and battery of a minor, contempt of court, and embezzlement and fraud when the forensic audit was complete. It turned out she'd stolen more money than she thought. She owed them $63,000 instead of $47,000. This was after she'd been cooking the books for 3 years. Then she pleadingly accepted a deal. 2 years in prison, 5 years probation, and full restitution to the HOA. Plus, she lost all rights to sit on an HOA or community organization board forever. Then her husband divorced her 3 weeks after she was convicted. The Sunset Meadows HOA was forced to choose an entirely new board of directors. Guess what was their first order of business? Striking 70% of their silly bylaws. Now, instead of all those silly bylaws, it's like this. Keep up your property. Don't play music at 2 a.m. Don't park on your lawn. That's it. Sophie's pink bike is still in our driveway. Nobody said a word. But here's what got my goat. We got a letter in the mail 6 months after all that blew up at court. It was from Patricia's sister. Remember the one who was supposed to watch her back as vice president? Here's what it said. Dear Mr. Chen, I owe you and Sophie an apology. Because Patricia's my sister, I stood by and did nothing while she acted like this year after year. What she did to your daughter opened my eyes. I'm ashamed it took a show like that to realize what's right and what's wrong. Sophie must be all right, though. That's all that matters now. You're going to be a lousy father if you don't forgive. Your kid's mother? Sophie and I are discussing what she wants to write back. When she wants to write back when you see what? Here is what Sophie wants to say when you see what's inside. Sophie, Dad, may I write back? Marcus. Absolutely. What do you want to tell her? In writing? Marcus, what do you want to say? How do you feel? What do you think? To whom? That's what writing's all about. What do you want to say? How do you feel? What do you think? To whom? That's what writing's all about. What do you want to say? How do you feel? What do you think? To whom? That's what writing's all about. What do you want to say? How do you feel? What do you think? To whom? That's what writing's all about. What do you want to say? How do you feel? What do you think? To whom? That's what writing's all about. What do you want to say? How do you feel? What do you think? To whom? That's what writing's all about. What do you want to say? How do you feel? What do you think? To whom? That's what writing's all about. What do you want to say? How do you feel? How end screen with subscribe button.